I really hope that this post-mortem nose-piercing thing does not become a thing.
Well, nose piercing is kind of a thing, but...
I think it should be neither pre nor post-mortem. Sweetie, when I pass on, please
don't
do
pierce
not
your nose.
impale my nose.
Or
Wrap
throw you in the ocean.
wrap me in a bag of burlap and throw me overboard. Welcome, bedheads. Here we are in Outlandish Outlander BedVlogs, episode season 03e10.
Yeah, good. You got that right this time. It was so hard for me not to tell you that Pound was a goner, although some people on Facebook were saying, oh, it's so obvious. You know how you say, like, if somebody, like, takes a drink in a movie, then you know that alcohol is going to be a big part of the plot. Somebody else said, well, as soon as poor Elias Pound licked his hands, you knew he was going to die. And then when he gave his rabbit foot away to Claire, then you knew for sure he was a goner. I did look up who the writer and the director were on this episode, which was also called Heaven and Earth. And that came from something that Jamie said when he was in the prison. He said, wouldn't you move heaven and earth, or I would move heaven and earth, you know, to get, to rescue the woman I love. Well, so the director, and it was interesting because it was two men, the writer and the director, and the past couple, or at least the last one, I think, is a woman writer and a woman director. And next week also, just because I just looked it up, I know, is going to be a woman writer. Two women writers and a woman director. So the writer is someone named, and I hope I'm saying this right, Luke Schellhaas. And the director is someone named David Moore.
Luke and David, I am now putting you on Snapchat video. Just the 10-second, actually, it's just me saying Luke and David.
I'm sure they're watching our podcast. So I was a little concerned because of the gross out factor of some of last week. And also because since I am a book reader, and as I always say, we are not spoiler free, although I don't plan to be super full of spoilers today. I knew what was going to happen, and it's tough material. So, I mean, I'm a weenie, and I was not exactly looking forward to it. And I knew, because I've read the book, that this week was pretty much going to be more of the same. But it was sort of interesting to see the material handled by two different directors and two different writers. I'm going to be all about positivity. Well, I usually am all about positivity, but that's one thing that's been a little bit of a bummer for me.
No
this
hating
season.
here.
Yeah. There's been a lot of hate
At
going on.
BedVlogs, we bring the love, because there should always be love when vlogging from bed.
So I'm just going to get out of the way, although after I edit everything and rearrange things, it may not be at the beginning. The part of the episode that made me afraid to look on Twitter and see what people were saying. And that is that in the book, spoiler, it just so happens that the ship, the Porpoise, is the ship that is bringing Lord John Grey to be the new governor of Jamaica. And if you don't like coincidences, then you need to just stop being a Diana Gabaldon fan right now. Everybody says that, and it's true. If something can happen that's just the hugest coincidence in the world, in Outlander, in all of the books, it will, you know. So it just so happens in the book that Lord John Grey, who you know who that is, right? The governor of Arsbury Prison, who befriended Jamie and is madly in love with Jamie, the Porpoise is bringing him to Jamaica. He has not been out and about much for fear of the sickness, but at the very end, and when Claire was up on the boat at the end...
She's just spoiled the whole thing for me. It was supposed to be the shocker.
Well, it didn't happen. So it's kind of not a spoiler because it didn't happen.
But sweetie, maybe the shocker happens next week.
Well, she jumped off board. I don't think they're going to show you any more scenes on the Porpoise. But in the book, when she's up in the moonlight at the end there, they had that lovely scene, and instead one of the soldiers whose name I never got, who was also kind of supportive of her, is talking to her, and then I think Elias Pound comes up and talks to her. But in that scene in the book, Lord John Grey comes upon her, or she comes upon him, and they strike up a conversation. And they have a lovely conversation with each other, and he thanks her for her efforts. He assumes that she is the doctor who was impounded, and they have a nice scene, although neither one of them has even the slightest idea who the other one is. And this part of this book, it just happens to not be something I remember every little detail of. So I didn't particularly I kind of liked that this time. I sort of, except for the part where it was kind of hard to ignore, oh my gosh, where's Lord John Grey? Because I kept expecting to see him. I just expected to see him. And particularly in that scene where there she was, standing up on the boat deck in the moonlight, I'm like, here comes Lord John Grey. And he didn't. So that was hard not to notice. But in other terms, except...
He was busy playing chess with the Whopper computer from War Games.
Yes, that's
As
true.
part of that
I like
crossover.
that. I like that thought. Yet, except for knowing that poor Elias Pound was going to die, because I did remember that, and I was trying very hard not to spoil that for you.
She was weepy seepy.
Yeah.
She was seeping from her weep.
I was kind of glad that I didn't remember the details of the book that intricately, because it allowed me to just sit back and enjoy the episode, or lie back and enjoy the episode. I've got notes, and here we go. I'm going to just power through them because we've already been talking for 28 minutes. I thought the MVPs of the episode, you can tell me if you agree with me or not, I had to have MVP for each boat. Okay? And first of all, just get it out of the way, where was E10 Cho? Jamie was sitting...
And where was John Malkovich?
Jamie was sitting there...
I ask you that.
Vomiting all over the jail cell. Wouldn't they send him, E10 Cho, to put the needles in his face? I just didn't get that. I just imagined that they did not hire Gary Young to be in this episode.
Sweetie, he was busy shooting an episode of Law and Order, as all actors do in their downtime.
Maybe. Somebody said that Lord John Grey might not have been in the episode because his wife had a baby. Fergus, I thought, is the MVP on the Artemis, and Elias Pound, I thought, who is played by a young actor who is fairly new to the scene called Albie Marber, I thought was the MVP on the Porpoise. He made a huge impression on me. I mean, when and just all the little callbacks that they had, like when he tells her that it's the friend that pierces the nose, and he does it even though he's only 14 years old. He does it for the guy who came from his hometown, and then he asks Claire how she does it, and she says, but that guy wasn't my friend, so I can compartmentalize. And then, you know, when they brought that back and she had to do it for him because she was his friend, and she's weeping because she's lost children before. When he was delirious and she told him, yes, she was his mother. And then you knew that she knew he was going to die any second, you know. Yeah, it was sad. And then she pierces his nose. It was great. I loved it. I mean, I didn't love it because it was sad, but I thought they did it really well.
Weepy seepy. She was seeping from her weep.
What did you think about Fergus in this episode? You have nothing to say about Fergus?
Moving right along.
Okay, so mainly I just loved getting to know Fergus more, and I loved it, how complicated it was that he refused Jamie's request in his best interest. This was not Jamie's finest moment. I mean, I understood why he was so desperate, that he was so desperate to get Claire, and he didn't understand why he couldn't at least try for it. He's probably thinking back to Fort William when it was just like a few guys stormed the whole fort and he didn't even have a loaded gun. Well, Fergus was raised in a brothel and was a pickpocket at a young age, and is a pretty practical guy. And he's only got one hand, which was cut off by the redcoats. Again, he's thinking like, this ain't gonna work. I saw what happened once when I was younger, when us taking a stand didn't work. Somebody cut my hand off, and now they're gonna throw us in the ocean. I overheard them talking about it. I liked the writing in this episode. I liked that Fergus refused him, and that he said why, and that when he came back, he said, he threw it in his face, that he said, you would move heaven and earth to save Claire. I will not put myself in jeopardy and risk leaving Marsley alone on this ship. Last week I complained that I didn't think there was enough chemistry, or that we didn't get enough of scenes between Cesar Dumbois and Lauren Lyle.
That's her way of saying the whoop whoop factor was low in this episode.
No, it didn't need to be a whoop whoop. I knew, obviously, because I've read the books, that this was coming and that it's a big thing. But in the show, it was sort of like, you didn't really get a sense of the thing, you know, that they were cared that much for each other. I thought this week gave that back in spades. You really got a sense of both of them on a lot of different levels, and I really liked that. Marsley was still her strong self. It was basically at the end, she was like to Jamie, like, just say you're going to come quietly and give your word so you can get out of here. Don't you see this is what Fergus did for you? And, you know, so Fergus figured out a different way to help Jamie get out when they said they needed all hands on deck to try to get through this difficult part of, get past some difficult rocks near the coast. And so Fergus used that chance to get Jamie out legit. And I loved the scene between them. You learned so much about them when they were sort of overcome with passion, and she was like, come on, and he was like, nope, you know, I may have grown up in a brothel. I may have admitted to you last week that I've slept with a bunch of women, but I am not sullying you until we're officially married. So I liked the love scene between Fergus and Marsley.
There was a whoop scene that I missed?
Well, no, they didn't. They started making out, and she was like, hey, don't you notice, like, Jamie's locked up, Claire's not here, nobody's paying any attention to us being in separate bedrooms right now.
I thought he brought out his Nancy Reagan and said, just say no.
That's what he said, yeah. But it was a love scene. It was still very romantic. It was very romantic for him.
There was no whoop.
No, but there was smoochy, as you would say.
Sweetie? That was a singular.
I thought that whole scene told you a lot about both those characters, about their own personalities and their own sort of inner strength and where they're coming from psychologically, and also built chemistry between them that I didn't sense before, between the characters themselves and between the actors playing it. I liked that a super lot. And then the last thing I wanted to say was you had the women really shining this week in their strength. Claire standing up to men just all over the place on the porpoise in her doctor mode, you know, telling that cranky cook what he had to do, telling him they had to lock that guy up.
She just alliterated. We're professional poets, so that's what we do.
She stood up to the one-eyed man and lied and said that he might be contagious, so they would lock him up. She stood up to, was it the cook who found her? Whoever found her looking at the log and was going to attack her, you know, instead of, she was just like, you know, stood him down. Like, nope, I'll scream. Nope, I'll say you attacked me. You know I'm important on this boat. Get away from me. I'm glad they didn't have the crossover, the potential appropriate crossover with Dexter, because that would be one way to make sure that they're dead and bury them at sea. Claire's gonna wash up on a beach next week. We've seen the previews, so maybe she will find Tom Hanks sitting there with his soccer ball. Or is it a basketball? I haven't seen
Wilson!
that movie.
Wilson! We're so glad that Wilson is going to join.
Is that the soccer ball?
Yes,